Hey, you're back. Nice to see you. Live from the heart of America, I'm Steve Gruber. This is the Steve Gruber Show coming to you from big, beautiful Studio G, fighting for you from the foxhole of freedom. It is a no-panic zone. Lots to talk about. Nothing to ever panic about. Giving you better analysis than anyone else while defending this great nation every single day. It's the Steve Gruber Show. Here are three big things you need to know to start this day. Number one, what will Joe Biden do in his last 4 days in office? Yesterday, he took credit for a ceasefire in the Middle East and a deal to get hostages released, but everyone knows it was really Donald Trump's re-election and ultimatum that got it done. Number two, Joe Biden about to leave the White House with the lowest approval ratings that I've ever seen, 38% according to Real Clear Politics. He gave a farewell speech last night. Honestly, I didn't watch it. I don't care. And number three, the left is going wild this week on Capitol Hill, and honestly, it's not been a good look. We've been watching it, of course, here. In fact, I think it's fair to say it's been a borderline frightening look at times. The left never seems to fail to vindicate the right. When they go wild like this, people like, oh, yeah, that's why we didn't vote for you. The left does, however, flail quite a bit, moving about wildly, shouting as to disrupt Congress and deny President Trump's nominees a fair hearing. The left fails for this very reason over and again. For it's indecent and anti-democratic, and everybody sees it. It's ugly. The left fails to see how bad it looks or how good Pete Hegseth or Pam Bondi or Marco Rubio end up looking by comparison. Each nominee is a model of poise and become elevated to the dismay of Democrats like Elizabeth Warren, Adam Schiff, Richard Blumenthal, Mazie Hirono, and Dick Durbin, and all the rest of the dishonest-driven party hacks on the left. Each nominee is and has been resolute and sound, much to the frustration of Democrats in general, as they say they haven't laid a glove on them. Each nominee is worthy of confirmation, which is why Democrats are angry, or maybe panicked is a better word for it right now. Each nominee has thus far proven worthy of his or her role in defense of the defense itself of a strong America, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, which is to say Pete Hegseth will transform the Defense Department, and Pam Bondi will reform the Justice Department. Marco Rubio will remake the Department of State. All three nominees will seek to do what is right with firmness in the pursuit of individual rights. That's to the disappointment of the left and the Democrat Party. You see, everything else is noise, a distraction, which is really what the left wants, distractions. Instead of civil disagreement, of constructive and responsible opposition by the loyal opposition, the left is, well, they're uncivil. They're not loyal to you. They're loyal to themselves, their paychecks, and whatever they can scratch out of the money to be found on Capitol Hill. Instead of civil discourse and the free exchange of ideas, the left despises freedom, denounces competing ideas. Instead of civil debate or of addressing the merits of an argument, the left promotes hate, hates anyone who promotes merit-based hiring and smears them. You know, it's all for show. It's an ugly performance, and it's all for show. They get up there to give speeches and to take digs and try to throw out gotcha questions. Start with the left's hatred of Pete Hegseth this week. The left in action, they were interrupting him. And here's the thing about these protesters I didn't talk much about. They're violating his right to freedom of speech, to have his confirmation hearing. They were seated in guest seats. The protesters inside these hearings didn't get there by accident. They were seated by, I would assume, members of Congress, right? That's what happened. And it's the true face of the left, contempt for Christians, hatred toward Israel. Here's the left on January the 14th, according to its vision of January the 6th. Unruly and unkempt, no regard for peace, no respect for the rule of law, and no respect for decorum. Code pink, with the yellow of cowardice attacking Hegseth's faith, saying he's an enemy of America. Listen to this.
Thank you for figuratively and literally having my back.
You are a misogynist. Not only that, you are a Christian Zionist, and you support the war in Gaza by the Zionists.
I want to thank the authorities for their swift reaction to that outburst and state that similar interruptions will be treated in like manner.
Accountability and readiness.
Stop
Mr. Hegseth, suspend your remarks. Let me just say this. The Capitol Police are going to remove immediately individuals that are disrupting the hearing. I see a pattern attempted to be inflicted on the committee, and we're simply not going to tolerate that. Roger
Wicker. He handled that entire hearing, by the way, masterfully. He didn't get rattled. Hegseth didn't get rattled. It's just the shrill noise and nonsense of chaos presented by the left, and they're like, no, thank you. Then again, not everyone should be in the Senate. Case in point, Elizabeth Warren. She combines the arrogance of a Harvard professor with the malice of a political prosecutor. Her questioning of Hegseth was a disaster, that's to mean kind. More like a disastrous show trial with the room G50 of the Dirksen Senate office building serving as Warren's old classroom at Harvard Law. Hegseth acquitted himself with ease, dispatching Warren with brevity and making her look silly. Here it is.
Women do not belong in combat. Now, Mr. Hegseth, you have written that after they retire, generals should be banned from working for the defense industry for 10 years. You and I agree on the corrosive effects of the revolving door between the Pentagon and defense contractors. It's something I would have liked to talk to you about if you'd come and been willing to visit with me. But the question I have for you on this is, will you put your money where your mouth is and agree that when you leave this job, you will not work for the defense industry for 10 years?
Senator, it's not even a question I've thought about because it's not one
think about it right now.
It's not one. My motivation for this job
I understand
has never
that. I
been
just
about
need
what
a
could
yes or no
conceivably
here.
come next.
Time is short. I just need a yes or no.
I would consult with the president about what the policy should be
In
at the Defense
other
Department.
words, you're quite sure that every general who serves should not go directly into the defense industry for 10 years. But you're not willing to make that same pledge?
I'm not a general, Senator.
You'll be the one, let us just be clear, in charge of the generals. So you're saying sauce for the goose, but certainly not sauce for the gander?
I would want to see what the policy of the
Oh,
president
I'll
is.
bet you would.
Thank you, Senator Warren. Senator Tuberville.
I'll bet you would. I'll bet you would. Remember, she ran for president. Think about that for a moment and remember that things could have been worse than Joe Biden. She could have been there. And I think that could have been markedly worse, although Joe Biden has been flat awful. 4 days. 4 more days. I'll have more about Pam Bondi and Marco Rubio coming up. All right? Good to have you here. Look, we've got a country to save in 4 days to really roll up our sleeves and get going. We got a peace deal, it sounds like, in Gaza, if it holds. We've gotten the Laken Riley Act. It's going through, and some other great pieces of legislation. And Donald Trump isn't even in the Oval Office yet. Just wait until he is. I'll be right back. It is the failed messaging of the Democrats. It's been going on for a decade. Donald Trump's awful. Donald Trump's a fascist. Donald Trump's this and that and everything else, and a horrible human being. And the end result was it failed, and Donald Trump was reelected, as you well know, and it's probably the worst messaging effort by, well, anybody ever. The Democrats beat and beat and beat the same drum for 10 years and lost. And lost. Ha! And instead of saying, well, let's have some introspection, let's kind of reflect on what we've done here, no, instead of doing that, they come after Donald Trump's nominees with those same sharp knives that were completely ineffective over the last decade. They don't get it. They don't learn. Democrats made the same mistake with Pam Bondi. Adam Schiff tried to badger and belittle her. Adam Schiff, that guy, demanding that she answer his questions about hypothetical investigations of Liz Cheney, of all people. Bondi was nonplussed, enraging Schiff even more. She was right not to respond, by the way. She was right about reminding Schiff, who is a graduate of Harvard Law, that the Attorney General deals with real cases. Fundamental cases of crime and punishment, not hypothetical cases involving former politicians. Hypotheticals are for law students, not lawyers with decades of trial and experience. Listen to this.
Asking you, sitting here today, whether you are aware of a factual predicate to investigate Liz Cheney.
Senator, no one
Based
has
on what
asked
you
me
know.
to investigate Liz Cheney. That is a
The
hypothetical.
president has called for it publicly. You are aware of that, aren't you?
No one has asked me to investigate
But the president
Liz.
has
We're
called-
also
the
worried about
president-
Liz Cheney,
the
Senator.
president has
You know what
called
we
for
should
this-
be worried about?
Ms. Bondi,
The
please
crime rate
answer
in
my
California
questions.
right now
You are
is
aware,
through the roof.
Ms. Bondi,
Your robberies
Ms.
are
Bondi,
87%
my
higher
question-
than the national
my question
average.
is this.
That's what I
My
want to
question
be
is
focused
this.
on,
Do
Senator.
you have the
if
power
I'm
to say
confirmed as
no to the
Attorney
president?
General.
Yeah. She just set him right back down. Bondi repeated her commitment to restore confidence and integrity in the Department of Justice. And unlike Schiff, Bondi opposes lawfare. Unlike her critics, Pam Bondi opposes the criminalization of politics. And unlike Democrats, she opposes the anti-democratic practice of prosecuting citizens based on politics. Take Merrick Garland, for example. Unlike him, Bondi opposes the injustice of wrongful prosecution. Here she is again.
I will fight every day to restore confidence and integrity to the Department of Justice and each of its components. The partisanship, the weaponization will be gone. America will have one tier of justice for all.
And like Pam Bondi, Marco Rubio opposes the anti-democratic actions of terrorists and jihadists. His opening statement was a rousing defense of first principles for putting America first without forsaking our allies. He said what Tony Blinken could not or would not say, that Israel is right and Hamas is wrong, that moral equivalency between the two is evil, that Hamas is responsible for the October 7th attacks, that Hamas is guilty of mass murder, that Hamas must release the hostages, all of them without concession. President Trump, like Rubio, clear about the stakes. And like President Trump, Rubio refuses to temper his words to appease the enemies. And just like that, he refuses to weaken America or betray our interests. Here's Marco Rubio.
The piece of it was offensive. Let me explain, and I think I don't need to explain to this committee. Hamas carried out an atrocious operation. They sent a bunch of savages into Israel with the express and explicit purpose of targeting civilians. They went into concerts. They went into these music festivals. They knew that there were no soldiers at the music festival. They knew that these were teenagers and young families, that they went into different communities and the kibbutzes and the like, and they deliberately targeted civilians. Deliberately. It was in fact, they kidnapped the ones they didn't murder, the families who they didn't eviscerate, the people whose skulls they didn't crack open. They kidnapped, and to this day continue to hold people, innocents that they took. A deliberate operation. In the case of Israel, responding to that attack has had to go after Hamas. How can you coexist? How can any nation state on the planet coexist side by side with a group of savages like Hamas? They have to defend their national security and their national interest, as I pointed out in my opening statement. And so there is no more, and they didn't target civilians. Now, sadly and unfortunately, and I'm sure we'll discuss it further, some of the other questions that will come up here today, one of the horrible things about war, it's a terrible thing about war, and it's why we should try to prevent it at almost any cost, is that innocent people are caught up in it. And that's true of every conflict on the planet. But there is a difference between those who, in the conduct of armed action, deliberately target civilians, and those who do as much as they can to avoid civilians being caught up against an enemy that doesn't wear a uniform, against an enemy that hides in tunnels, against an enemy that hides behind women and children, and puts them at the forefront and uses them as human shields. That's who Hamas is. There is no moral equivalency, and I think the ICC, if they don't drop this, will find its credibility globally badly damaged, and I think the United States should be very concerned, because I believe this is a test run for applying it to American service member and American leaders in the future.
Now, he's referring to the International Criminal Court. Boy, did he lay out the case right. Pete Hegseth, Pam Bondi, Marco Rubio, the first of the nominees to come to Capitol Hill. They have the intelligence to defend our rights, the wisdom to promote our interests. They have the confidence to inspire change, to lead by example instead of leading from behind like we've done for 4 years or more if you consider Barack Obama's time in Washington. They have what Washington needs: excellence, experience. After 4 years of incompetence and lies, we deserve actual leadership in all of our departments. At the Pentagon, we need Pete Hegseth. At the DOJ, we need Pam Bondi. And at the State Department, we need Marco Rubio, Secretary of State. That's where we are. President Trump deserves to have all three in his administration and more. All of these folks deserve to be confirmed without delay. If we are to make America great again, we need to help President Trump. And President Trump is to succeed. He needs leaders who share his vision of America and for America first. They've all proven they have that. All of them. And more to come. Confirm them all. That's what the American voters voted for on November the 5th. Confirm them all. Give us real leadership. Those are my first thoughts today. We've got a lot of ground to cover today. I've got Congressman Ralph Norman coming up. I've got a little tip on your health coming up. If you've got a New Year's resolution, we'll talk about that as well. Still to come on the Steve Gruber Show. It was a very big day on Wall Street, in case you missed it. You see, they came out with a consumer price index higher than expected. 2.9%, I think, was the inflation rate that came out yesterday. Food increasing again, and that triggers positive reactions on Wall Street because they say, well, great, the Fed's going to cut interest rates again. We'll see. As I told you here, I was talking to a banker here a couple of days ago, last week, I guess, and I said, how are mortgage rates? They must be doing better. He said, no, they're back up to 7.5%, the average 30-year mortgage. 7.5%. Ouch. Yeah, so that's not going to move a lot of houses. But if you bring the interest rates down again, maybe it does. Wall Street very positive. The Dow up more than 700. The NASDAQ 460. S&P more than 107. So good stuff. Here, by the way, take this and put this into your fact sheet, if you will. Consumer prices up over 21%. Up over 21% since Joe Biden showed up on the scene. Yeah, there it is. Over 21% since Joe Biden showed up, and that's remarkable. Four of the six major grocery store food group indexes rose in December again. Gasoline increased 4.4%. All items, not including food and energy, up in December as well. I mean, this is just all, it just continues to rise and rise and rise. Airline tickets up 4% in December. I mean, I just keep looking and looking and looking. There's nothing good here. Here's something good. History, economics, the great works of literature, the meaning of the U.S. Constitution. If you studied these things, or even if you didn't, maybe it's time to learn something new. You can do that with my friends at Hillsdale College. Find out about the fundamental truths about this world and our country. Hillsdale College is offering more than 40 free online courses. That's right, 40 free. Those are the key words, 40 and free. Learn about the works of C.S. Lewis, the stories of the book of Genesis, the meaning of the U.S. Constitution, the Declaration of Independence. It can all be found on Hillsdale College's free online courses. I've enjoyed Constitution 101, for example, a course where you explore the design and the purpose of the Constitution, the challenges it faced during the Civil War, and how it's been undermined for more than a century by leftists. All of these courses are free. You can share them with your kids, your grandkids. You can watch them with a spouse. It's a great way to learn together. GruberForHillsdale.com. GruberForHillsdale.com. Learn more right now. GruberForHillsdale.com. It's free and it's wonderful. Welcome back to the program. Look, to call what happened in D.C. these last couple of days a circus would be impolite to the circus. To say the animals are loose would be impolite to the animals. Good Lord. The Pete Hegseth confirmation hearing was so far off the rails. I mean, I learned a lot. One thing I learned, if you're going to get insulted by Democrats trying to smear you as some sort of a wife beater or a drunkard, that Mark Wayne Mullen, that's a guy I want in my foxhole because he can tackle an oak tree and not get a scratch. Joining me now, Ralph Norman from South Carolina, has been in the House for a number of years. Congressman, welcome back.
Glad to be with you, Steve.
Yeah, I'd share a foxhole with Mark Wayne Mullen. It might be a bit bigger foxhole, but that guy, I mean, he called the Democrats out for what they were. What a circus. I mean, I know you watch this, but you have got to be as mortified as the rest of America when you watch these Democrats come completely unhinged.
Well, they've been that way, Steve. Look what they did to Supreme Court justices. Made up things. Yeah. They drug witnesses in that were basically just lying, and it doesn't surprise me, but Mark Wayne was exactly right. I mean, to call them out, for them to even suggest asking the questions, it's a laughing stock if it wasn't so serious, and he was right. I mean, the senators, let's look into their background. Let's see how much they drink. Let's see how many affairs they've had.
Exactly.
And see how that works out with them.
Well, there's a slush fund in Congress that came out a number of years ago. It's pretty well known now. Millions of dollars paid out to sexual assault victims and people that have accused members of Congress of doing, unspeakable and tawdry things. And the American taxpayer apparently gets to foot the bill. I mean, and these folks want to sit there on the high ground and lecture Pete Hegseth? Seemed pretty crazy to me.
They have no shame. I mean,
Yeah.
really, to listen to it. Now, luckily, Hegseth is smart enough. He's got the background. He knows what he's doing. The military is his mission in life, and he will do a fantastic job. And I think they now realize who they were up against. And his comment, I think it was to Elizabeth Warren that, she was asking me about, should generals not go into contracting and work? And his comment, I'm not a general, shut her down. And
Yeah, exactly.
I'm shut the others down.
All right, so let's talk. And it was beautiful when he did that. The whole place laughed, and as well they should. I mean, here's a woman who's faked being, a Native American for advancement in academia to get a job as a professor. You've got these other folks that have done all these different things. Tim Kaine looked like he had just come off a 2-week bender, and he's talking about people drinking. Good Lord.
He may want to comb his hair.
Yeah, you might want to comb your hair. You look like a clown. All right, let's talk about this. In a couple of days here, Donald Trump will be in the Oval Office. The problem with that is that in your House, that'll mean 217 Republicans to 215 Democrats because 3 of your colleagues will be on to bigger and better things, if you will. It's tight. Can the House get things done? I know that you've been a voice out there in the wilderness sometimes, standing by yourself sometimes because you stand on principle, right? How tough is it going to be for this House to move forward and stay united as a Republican caucus?
Well, the old saying, if it were easy, everybody would be doing it. But here's the good news. Here's what we're so blessed to have Donald Trump in office, who he is sitting down with everybody. I was in Mar-a-Lago on Friday. He had a full house then. He had a full house Saturday and Sunday, and he's bringing people together. Everything starts with the conversation. He's got an agenda that he's laid out, and he knows he's on a short time frame, Steve. I know he's got 4 years, but really he's got 12, 13 months because when the midterms hit, people in elected office do strange things to be in office. So I'm optimistic on his main goals. He really wants his debt ceiling raised so he's not held hostage by Chuck Schumer. He really wants border control. He really wants a military that does its job to protect the country. And I think leading the pack will be those things. Now, he's got to have the offsets to go with it. These stupid EV mandates, the incentives that they gave, the IRS money that was out there, the student loan debacle, all that's got to be repealed. And the Freedom Caucus is coming out with a letter of suggested things to lead off with, and I think Donald Trump will do that.
When it comes to national security, and this has been something that has been, it was mocked at first, but it is not something to mock. It is dead serious. I go back to my middle school days. I thought it was the worst thing in the world when Jimmy Carter gave away the Panama Canal for $1 in 1977, I believe it was. It was a foolish thing to have done. We built that big ditch. It is more strategically important to the United States than any other country on earth. And now we've let Panama take over, who have basically given all this power to the Chinese. That can't stand. And secondly, Donald Trump wants Greenland, and he should want Greenland. People are like, well, that's ridiculous. Ha, ha, ha. No, this is serious. And by the way, we bought the Virgin Islands from Denmark. We can buy Greenland from Denmark just the same, can't we?
We can, and get this. He hasn't even taken the oath of office yet. And the fact that he's holding press conferences, which with the current president, with Biden, not only could he did not hold a press conference, he couldn't survive one because he can't read a thank you note. But the bottom line is the things that he's proposing, buying Greenland, think about negotiating with him. Think about he went on and put out that if Hamas does not release hostages, all hell will break loose. And he hadn't even taken office yet. That's the kind of leader and that's the kind of man that he backs up what he says. He did the previous 4 years, and he'll do it the next 4 years. So it's going to keep the House together. To answer your question, I think we will get together. I think everybody, we're free spirits over there. We have each have different constituencies.
Some more free than others, I might point out, but go on.
Well, you're right there. But look, in my world, the number one cancer in America is the debt. We cannot continue
Agreed.
spending, and that's what got me so frustrated with Mike Johnson. With after the elections, that we still had a 1,500 page document and given 12 hours to read. That can't happen again. There's no spending that should take place without offsets. And 34 trillion is just not some figment of my imagination. And I'm simply not going to leave that to the younger generation. I've got interns in my office now that are going to be left with a insurmountable debt, grandchildren, children, and we have to. That's the cancer we have to stop. So to that end, we will work for the next 2 years, and then hopefully, with Trump at the helm, we'll get this thing under control and get the country back on the rails that Biden has failed miserably at.
He certainly has failed. Although he released a letter now saying that the economy is great, and then all of a sudden the inflation numbers come out. And the inflation numbers are up again, and the stock market goes wild because they're like, great, we're going to have an interest rate cut because inflation's too high. Again, he has no command of the situation. Look, and what we know now, Congressman, is he never has. Not since 2020. They knew then that he was not fit for the job, and he has not been fit for the job 4 years since. And that's where we find ourselves today.
Well, his judgment has never been good. Name me one good thing he's done the 50 years he's been in Congress. And he's disconnected. To say that he presided over the best economy that's existed is like saying California is not on fire. I mean, it's not in reality. Yeah. And so he can't even sign a document now. But for them to remain quiet while the leader of the free world was basically incapacitated is a crime, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Congressman Ralph Norman from South Carolina 5. I'm on my way to the inauguration. Maybe I'll see you there. Look forward to it if I do.
Well, we'd love to do it, and great days ahead for America.
I certainly hope so. I'm an optimist about it too, my friend. Thank you, Ralph Norman.
Yep.
There you have it. And we'll be headed to the inauguration. A lot of great coverage here, and I'd like you to be part of it. So make sure you come here for all the best coverage of the inauguration of Donald Trump to be the 47th president of these United States. I'll be right back. So, question for you. How you doing on that New Year's resolution? Going well? You off to a good start? Rough start? Well, a lot of people make promises about what they're going to do different in the new year. They're going to eat less, get in shape, no alcohol, whatever it might be. And health is always a big thing, but, for some, man, it's a tough road. Joining me is Russ Yeager. He's the owner and CEO of Fitness Together in Greater Atlanta. Russ, nice to have you back on the program.
Hey, Steve. Great to be back, buddy. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Look, we got to talking here recently about an article I saw, and you said, I want to talk about that next time I'm on. And that is a gym owner that says no new members in January. Says he just bans them because he says what happens is they show up all eager beaver, and they're there, and then a couple weeks, and 3 weeks, and 4 weeks, and then they're not there anymore. Right? It just kind of fades away. And I guess what he's saying is fitness has to be something you're dedicated to, not just a New Year's resolution. You got to make up your mind. You got to get in the game, as it were. I mean, what do you think about that guy saying no new memberships in January because it disrupts my regulars?
I think it's really interesting. Obviously New Year, one of the biggest resolutions people make is I'm going to get in shape, I'm going to exercise, and the gyms get super packed, right? And sure. I think there's an official quit date of resolutions. I think it's January 19th or January 20th or 21st, something like that, because the reality is most people don't stick to the resolutions. They stick to what they're committed to. So, I have not done that. I think it's interesting. I know why he does it, because he wants, his clients who are committed to him and committed to their health
sure.
around to actually have the gym. It's a pretty interesting strategy. And I haven't done that, but I do always tell my clients that clients that start in November and December during the holidays, I always know that they're going to be successful because they're not doing it because of a resolution or because of the turn of the calendar. They're doing it because they've gotten to a point where they've decided that it's important to take care of their body and their health, and they're doing it no matter
sure.
What the date is or what's going on.
That's kind of your story. For anybody who doesn't know it, we've gotten to become friends here recently, but that's kind of your story. You were kind of the fat kid, right? You wore the chubby pants, and you hated it after a while. It drove you to being not only fit to be a fitness coach and everything else, right?
I hated it, bro. I wore the husky pants. Husky pants. I hated going to the pool. Wearing the white T-shirt to try to hide the big spread of fat around my stomach. My friends made fun of me, and I started working out. I started trying to eat better. I had okay results. I didn't really know what I was doing. I was a CPA working in the, corporate world, traveling all the time, late night business dinners, drinking and partying. And finally, at 27 years old, Steve, I said, enough's enough. And that's like the number one thing, if I could give advice. Like people always say, what's the thing? How do they ask about, free weights versus machines, brown rice versus white rice, keto versus intermittent fasting, all this different stuff. I'm like, you need to make a decision. You need to make a commitment. And then you can find a plan that's going to work for you. That's important too, but you've got to have that commitment. So I made that commitment. I hired a coach. It's the other thing, I've been using coaches my whole life. That's why I became a coach, because, a great coach is going to help you commit, give you the plan, and then hold you accountable to actually following through until you not only get the results you want, but you have the discipline, skills, mindset, so that it's not just some 3-month or 6-month, thing when you worked out and you made a transformation to have the before and after pictures, but that it's something you can keep for the rest of your life. I tell people I'm proud of winning that transformation contest, which is, I did 23 years ago with my coach. But I'm way more proud of staying in shape, Steve, for the past 23 years. So that's what I focus on with our clients.
Look, 23 years ago, the world was a different place. And I bring this up because you are a trainer, a coach, a mentor, all of these things, right? These are all things, and maybe a psychologist and a person there that's helped people get through all sorts of things. But the world's different. What I mean by that, Russ, is 23 years ago, you didn't jump online like we are here and say, hey, you're Atlanta, but you can train anybody anywhere in the world because you can see what they're eating, you can see what they're working out on, you can see what they're doing for their bodies, what they're like mentally and physically. You can do all of that remotely now, and that's a vastly different world, isn't it?
Yeah, I think I feel like I'm a psychologist a lot of the time. That's funny. Yeah, 100%. It's really interesting, Steve. Actually, my first coach was remote, and that was not normal back then. And that's how I started. I started doing, remote online coaching. Then I added my studios, in 2006, 2007, 2008, and, really got back to growing our online, business, working with people all over the world about 4 or 5 years ago. But yeah, it's a different world. It's a different world. Some people need that in person. They want that touch to touch, but most people, they need a plan. They need to know what to do. They need someone inspiring them and holding them accountable, holding their feet to the fire.
That's
and they
the big
need, a community that's actually going to support them in their journey. And you can do that, remotely.
Yeah, accountability is the big one. That Ivy and I went through 75 hard, and that's how we did that. We did it by, we're there to say, okay, you're doing this, we're doing that, we're getting it done. Accountability is really important. Now, you have this program. It's a self-study, 30-day program. And in fact, anybody who's listening today, there's a complimentary kickoff, there's accountability coaching sessions, there's all of these different things because you bring it down to the package. You're not doing it for New Year's Eve or New Year's resolution. You're doing it now or any time of the year, right?
Yeah, I mean, my normal programs I work with my clients is a minimum of 6 months to 12 months because, there's a lot of places you can sweat. We're in the business of permanently transforming people's lives, and that takes time, not only from a physical aspect, although it's a pretty cool return. You can, treat your body horribly for 50 years. In 3 to 6 months, you can look completely different. But what I found is if I can wrap my, mind around their mind and, get them in, the vicinity of like-minded people, 6 to 12 months, they not only, again, meet or exceed their goals, have the body, health, energy they want, but they've got the skills, discipline, mindset, so they can keep it for the rest of your life. And again, that's, what good is it to get in shape and to go back and stay in that cycle of lose weight, gain weight, lose weight, gain weight? My biggest goal for my clients is, number one, what they want, what's important to them, but that they're able to meet or exceed those goals, and then most importantly, keep it for the rest of their life, just like I did, for the last 23 years.
The number one thing, my friends, that you can do, Russ will tell you the same, make the commitment to your health. I mean, I want to live to be 125 years old. I'm going to have to do that with health. RussYeager.com, the place to do that. RussYeager.com. You can find out more. Russ, thank you so much.
Thank you, Steve. Anytime, bro, man.
All right, that's it for Russ. We'll be right back on the Steve Gruber Show. 4 days to go, and so I asked this question. It's a serious question. Did you watch any of it last night? Joe Biden apparently gave his farewell address at 8 o'clock last night. But apparently, and look, I assume this is true. It was on tape. Apparently, they had a little snafu queuing it up at the top. and show that they had to click play. Which would make sense. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. I don't even care. Live or on tape, it's irrelevant. Because Joe Biden is irrelevant to me going forward. The lost presidency. To me, that's what it is. The lost presidency, the COVID years, the COVID presidency. Joe Biden's about as popular as COVID right now. By the way, Real Clear Politics has his average at 38%. Joe Biden's approval rating at 38%, and some of them as low as 35%. Yeah, it's crazy bad. By the way, the approval of Trump's transition, very positive, in the 50s, so that's going well. Let's see here. Here's a CNN poll. President Biden job approval, 37%. Congressional job approval, 16%. We'll see if that improves. 16% is all they have. A little bit tough there, anyhow. Joe Biden, 38% on his way out the door. And, there he goes. See you later, Joe. Really appreciate you being here. This part of the program brought to you by the Wellness Company. We believe your health is our greatest asset. From natural supplements to comprehensive medical consultations, TWC offers doctor-developed solutions designed to support your heart, immune system, your overall well-being. Daily essentials, immune support formulas, they all give your body the nutrients it needs to thrive. Ready to take charge of your health journey in 2025? Join the membership program for access 24/7, virtual care from experts, exclusive discounts on supplements, and personalized health plans just for you. TWC.health/Gruber. TWC.health/Gruber. Go there today and order. TWC.health/Gruber. Use the promo code Gruber. You will save 10% on whatever you do. The Wellness Company, where healthcare meets self-care. All right, we're going to get from the heart of America. I am Steve Gruber. Glad to be here with you, fighting for you from this land of freedom. 4 days to go, my friends, and I'll continue to be the tip of the spear against all those trying to fight back against the inevitable, which is leadership in America. Giving you better analysis than anyone else in defending this great nation. It is the Steve Gruber Show, and here are 3 big things you need to know to start this day. Number 1, the confirmation battles on Capitol Hill will continue, and the teeth were bare and the fur was flying yesterday, just as another group of Democrats watched their power slip into the hands of Donald Trump. 4 days now. 4 days. Number 2, the argument over who made the deal to end the war in Gaza is now ongoing. I think Joe Biden may have tried to take credit for it again last night, but like I said, I didn't watch it. With 38% approval leaving office, I don't care. I don't think anybody else does either, to be honest with you. And number 3, it is sad. But the fires in Los Angeles are continuing. And what we're hearing now more and more, tapes are coming out of fire officials saying we are not prepared. We are underfunded. We are understaffed, and we don't have enough equipment to do the job. The destruction now almost unimaginable. More than 12,000 homes gone. More than 24 dead. And for too many in the LA and Hollywood areas, well, I'm sad to say it seems the fire may have singed their brains as well. What do I mean by that? Well, Jimmy Kimmel has clearly suffered a break with reality. Again, but this one's quite severe. He is accusing those of us who say LA got screwed by bad policies and poor planning and bad forest management that produced these terrible wildfires. Well, that makes us racist. He's blubbering again, too, of course. Good grief. Get a grip, Jimbo. This is just so much. Listen.
I think I speak for all of us when I say it has been sickening, shocking, awful experience, but has also been, in a lot of ways, a beautiful experience because once again, we see our fellow men and women coming together to support each other. People who lost their own homes were out volunteering in parking lots, helping others who lost theirs. And tonight, I don't want to get into all the vile and irresponsible and stupid things our alleged future president and his gaggle of scumbags chose to say during our darkest and most terrifying hour. The fact that they chose to attack our firefighters, who apparently aren't white enough to be out there risking their lives on our behalf, it's disgusting, but it's not surprising. Instead, I want to focus on thanking those men and women because let's always should never stop.
What's disgusting is that Jimmy Kimmel plays the race card. This is how pathetic these people are. Jimmy Kimmel plays the firefighters are not white enough. Where the hell was that said? By anyone ever during the Los Angeles fires? Nowhere is the answer you're looking for. They're so self-absorbed in wokeness that they can't accept that they lost an election, and therefore they turn it into this attack on you and me because apparently we don't think that our firefighters are white enough. Good grief. The fire burned his brain, what's left of it. This is why these shows have no ratings. It's why nobody cares when Joe Biden goes out and gives a farewell address. They're like, yeah, good. Your farewell address could simply be goodbye. Thank you, Joe. Goodbye. There, the end of there's the entire speech. But trying to claim everything's great, the economy's great, inflation's back up. Wall Street is thrilled because they think that more interest rate cuts are on the way. So Wall Street roared yesterday. But inflation is up. The fires are out of control. There's no control at the southern border. There will be. A week from now, it's a different world. 1 week from now, it's a different. Keeping up with what's going to happen in the first 100 days is going to be a lot of responsibility. A lot of responsibility because he is going to move quickly. More than 100 executive orders expected on day one. From there, more legislation. The Lake and Riley Act, for example, will make it to his desk that he will sign. And other pieces of legislation that have been voted for and approved by the American voters. By the way, here's another bit of the derangement of Los Angeles. An angry local news anchor ripping on people making political points. He apparently doesn't realize it was a supermajority Democrat powerhouse that gave him everything he is seeing in these fires. It was a Democrat supermajority. Republicans had no say in any of this. Democrats cut the budget at the state level, at the local level. The head of the firefighters union says, we have been warning you for months that we're understaffed, underfunded, and don't have enough equipment. And yet this is a local news anchor losing his mind. Not on television, but on a podcast. Listen.
People are really hurting. And it is disgusting and gross that any leader would take this opportunity as a moment to score political points. And any of those people, Democrat or Republican, I invite them to come to Pacific Palisades, come to Altadena, and walk those streets like I did yesterday, look around, and then say the same thing in good conscience. I invite them to come to the evacuation centers where there's hundreds and maybe thousands of people scattered all over the place who are desperate, who lost everything in their life, and go look them in the eye and then try to make a political point. We need help.
Clearly, you need help. But the idea that this isn't political is absurd. You didn't need to lose 12,000 homes. That did not need to happen. You didn't need to lose 24 lives. And that number's going to go up. Make no mistake. As they sift through the wreckage of Malibu and Pacific Palisades and a few houses in Brentwood, they're going to find more bodies. Guarantee it. And it was predictable. And therefore it was preventable. But it was ignored. Yeah. Your assistant mayor, deputy mayor, I guess is the term, fired last fall. That's the person in charge of EMS and fire. The deputy mayor fired and not replaced, so there's nobody in the position. Karen Bass goes off to Africa, having been told that big Santa Ana winds are coming and the fire danger was high, didn't care, went off to Ghana, because I guess that's what people do, go to Ghana. And this guy thinks that there's nobody to be held accountable. We're not going to hold anybody accountable because that's political. Garbage. Of course we're going to hold people accountable. It's what we do. It's why we're here. If you call that scoring political points, so call it whatever you want. But in the aftermath of these firestorms, accountability is important, and who is responsible is important. These bad policies lead to bad outcomes, and bad outcomes for real people. The people you say are suffering and hurting, that's true. Because of piss-poor policies from the people that are allegedly in charge. Mark Meckler will join me next here on the program. He wants a convention of the states. Maybe the atmosphere is more ripe for it now than it has been before. A convention of the states coming up next with Mark Meckler. Don't go anywhere. How about a convention of the states? Article 5 convention of the states. It's not been done before, but the largest nationwide movement to push for that is, well, it feels like they've got some wind in their sails. Mark Meckler is the president and co-founder of Convention of States Action. Joining me now. Mark, good morning. Welcome to have you on the program.
Good morning, Steve. Good to be with you.
All right, so the states are rising, you say. Now, what is, first of all, why would you think that now is the time? That's question one. And with Donald Trump headed back to the White House, what would be your demands, if you will, at a convention of states?
Look, now is the time because the people are rising up all across the country against the overreach of the federal government. People have had it. They know that we need a balanced budget amendment. They know that the federal government will never stop spending unless we force them to stop spending. They know that we need term limits. You look at McConnell and Pelosi and Schumer and all these folks that have worn out their welcome many years ago. They know that we need to return power to the states by doing away with things like the Department of Education and Energy and the EPA. And the only way we're going to get that stuff done is if we rise up, join together as states, which the Constitution gives us the right to do, and pass amendments that allow us to take this control back from the federal government. And I would say now is absolutely specifically the time because with Donald Trump going into the White House, that feeling is rising in America. And many members of the Trump administration have already expressed support for this idea, including J.D. Vance, Pete Hegseth, Brooke Rollins, who's going to be Ag Secretary, Mike Huckabee, who's going to be our ambassador to Israel, and many others in the administration are already supportive of the idea. So I think the moment is right now.
So, all right, so a balanced budget amendment. These are some of the things that you want there. Here's, the concern. You and I have talked about this. I'm sure you talk about this with lots of folks. The concern is if you go in with an open convention, that everything's up for discussion. So you have to, some say you have to go in with a list of topics wanted to be discussed, 1, 2, 3, and that's it, and that's all that gets discussed. How does it play out? Tell the folks, first of all, what is an Article 5 convention, just for anybody that doesn't know, and then how do you control what gets discussed and what's off limits?
Sure. Article 5 refers to Article 5 of the United States Constitution. That lists the two ways that we can propose amendments to the Constitution. First is when 2/3 of both houses of Congress want to propose it, and that's how we've gotten all 27 amendments so far. The second way, put in the Constitution specifically to push back against federal tyranny, is when 2/3 of the states agree to come together in convention and have these discussions. And you're right about limiting what can be discussed. This call we're doing is not a call for an open convention. It's a call to discuss 3 subject matters. One is anything that would impose fiscal restraints on the federal government. We mentioned a balanced budget amendment, but it would include things like tax caps, spending caps, imposing generally accepted accounting principles on the federal government, anything else that would limit their ability to spend endlessly. Number 2 is anything that would impose term limits. And by that, I mean not just on Congress, but also on staffers and bureaucrats, what I call the Fauci Amendment. We never want to see another Dr. Fauci in the federal government for 40 years. And third, finally, and I think most importantly, anything that would limit the scope or power or jurisdiction of the federal government. By that, I mean telling them what they can't do, that they can't be involved in education or energy or healthcare or the environment, taking them back to something that resembles the original 17 enumerated powers in the Constitution.
And why is now the right time? And how do you get there? What is the procedure to make this happen?
Yeah, so from a process perspective, it takes 34 states, and each state has to pass a resolution in both houses of their state legislature. No governor's signature is necessary. It's a resolution, not legislation. So far, 19 of the requisite 34 states have done it. We've got 45 states now in session.
Is there a time limit? So if 19 states over 50 years say, let's do it, then by the time you get to state 34, then you're in.
Yeah, that's correct. There's no time limit. States can put time limits on their applications. Most states don't do that. So we have 19. I think by the end of this month, We're going to have 20 because right now, as we talk, there's a hearing set in South Dakota for this Friday. I think by the end of the month, we'll have South Dakota in the bag too. That'll take us to 20. Very close in Kansas will be 21. I think we end up this year with an additional 5 or 6 states. We're going to be around 26 out of the requisite 34 states by the end of this year.
Why can't you get states to move faster?
Yeah, it's just a slow process. It was meant by the framers to be a very slow process. They didn't want us to easily amend the Constitution. That's our foundational document. They wanted there to have to be millions of people to have consensus across 34 states. So it was built to be slow. And I can tell you from the hard work, the slog that it is out there in the legislatures, it is slow work.
All right, so 26 states by the end of this. So, I mean, are you a year away? Are you 2 years away? Are you 10 years away?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say exactly, but my hope is that by 2026, we hit the requisite number of states, and that would put us in convention by end of 26, early 27. That would be my current goal.
And what would that mean, do you think, on the race for president in 2028? What kind of an impact?
I think it would become the fundamental issue on the race for president in 2028. I know J.D. Vance is already a supporter. Look, the big goal here is to create a permanent legacy. President Trump's going to go in. I think he's going to do a lot of great stuff. We saw from Pete Hegseth's confirmation hearing and Pam Bondi and Marco Rubio. We're going to see good stuff out of this administration. All of that, and we've seen this over the last 4 years, all of it can be erased in 5 minutes of the next presidency. And what we want to do is make sure that a lot of this stuff gets cast in cement, that it's permanent, that we do away with the Department of Education, that we bring the power back to the states. They're talking about term limits. Congress will never impose term limits on itself. So I believe, especially with J.D. Vance there as the vice president and the likely next presidential candidate for the Republican Party, that this has a lot of capture right now.
Yeah, I think he's almost certain to be the next candidate for president for the Republicans. We'll see. Mr. Meckler, I give you credit. You're steadfast. You're determined. You don't give up. How long have you been doing this?
Over 10 years now.
Yeah, so you've been at it for a while, and a while to go. Mark Meckler, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Steve.
What do you guys think of that? Give me a note. Go to stevegruber.com. Drop me a note. What do you think of that? Is it the right thing? All right, this part of the program brought to you by Sawchuck Wealth. If you're a patriot and have $500,000 to $10 million, hold conservative values and believe in the America First agenda, Sawchuck Wealth has built a wealth management system exclusively for you. The America First Built to Last blueprint is based on 4 core principles: unexpected and welcome transparency, relentless cost reduction, disciplined and robust risk management. America First, of course. The mission is simple, delivering so much value that you wonder if another reasonable alternative even exists. Go to sawchuckwealth.com/Gruber. You'll schedule a free 30-minute fit call. sawchuckwealth.com/Gruber. We've been telling you this for a while, and that is low police and victim participation in violent crime reporting has undermined everything these Democrats tell us about low crime rates in their cities. Fact of the matter is, the numbers say something completely different. The numbers say that violent crime in America's cities has gone up dramatically over the last 4 years. Dramatically. But when you don't have anybody reporting the crimes, or the police aren't reporting the crimes, or the FBI are not getting the proper statistics, what happens? Well, what happens is you get bad numbers. Pretty simple, bad numbers. Manipulation of numbers as well. When the FBI releases crime data in 2023 going into the election year, the statistics showed a 2.1% decrease in violent crime in 22, but the truth of the matter is it was up 4.5%. When they went back and fixed the numbers, it was 4.5% higher. Yeah. John Lott told us that here. He's talking to John Solomon, my friend over at Just the News, saying exactly the same thing. The numbers were garbage. Garbage. So, here we are, cleaning up the mess and the lies. 4 days. And we're on a new track, all right? 4 days. Let's see, Elaine Parker from the Job Creators Network up next. We're going to talk about inflation and jobs in America and the new administration coming in after this. Well, if you haven't seen the numbers, the inflation numbers up again. That's right, inflation numbers up again. What are we at? 2.9%. The point, that's 3 months in a row that inflation is going back up the other way. Wall Street loved it because they think, well, there'll be another rate cut to interest, and therefore the market's boomed. But what about you and what happens next? Elaine Parker from the Job Creators Network is joining me now. Elaine, nice to have you on the program.
Great to be back, Steve. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. All right, so look, 4 days, Joe Biden and this administration are gone. I think we're both pleased about that. I am certainly, because I'm optimistic that if you get rid of regulations and roadblocks and lower taxes, that's good for, well, for job creation in this country. The inflation report, another example of, well, this administration overhyping its success. They did it last night. I didn't even watch the Joe Biden farewell. My farewell to Joe Biden is bye-bye. What do you make of all this?
Well, as far as the inflation goes, his lasting legacy will be the fact that he never got inflation under control, and it was the reckless spending of his administration and the anti-energy policies that inflicted this carnage on Americans. Inflation, as you know, is a regressive tax on everyday ordinary Americans. 21% is what he's going to leave office with overall on his administration. This feels eerily like the Carter administration, believe it or not. I didn't think that was possible, but I think he may have taken the mantle of worst president from Carter when he gave the eulogy last week.
I think you're right. I think that it's the worst of my lifetime. Maybe not the worst president ever. James Buchanan's hard to beat, but certainly a terrible run for my lifetime in everything that's going on here. Because it's not just that, it's all the other things, the failures in Afghanistan, the failures at the border, the failures with the economy, they all pile up into a totality of just terrible leadership. Now, like I said, 4 days away, Elaine, and we head into a new administration. And we're already feeling what I refer to as the Trump effect, and that's the positive influence in a variety of areas. What are you hoping for when it comes to American jobs? We want to bring more manufacturing back home. I'll give Joe Biden and his administration some credit there. They did, repatriate some jobs, but there's a lot more work to be done. What are some of the things you'd like to see happen in 2025 and 26 to move this forward?
We would love to see Trump bring forward his one big beautiful bill that he's talking about and focus on getting the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act not only extended but expanded. That was one of the biggest bumps that propelled the economy under his first administration, helped small businesses, helped ordinary Americans. That is the kind of optimism that we're seeing, out of our small business owners. We have one small business owner in South Florida who basically it was dependent on whether or not he would open more restaurants. If the Democrats won, he did not plan to open new restaurants. Now that Trump won, he's going to open 2 more restaurants. He's going to hire 100 people. And he said, I couldn't have done this under the policies that Joe Biden was continuing to inflict on Americans. But because he sees the deregulation coming, the cutting of the reckless spending, extension of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, those are the types of policies that our small business owners have been waiting for. And we're seeing a surge in optimism. I mean, when we looked at our post-election polling, Steve, Trump carried small business owners by 17 points. I mean, 17 points, that's unheard of.
Yeah, that's remarkable territory is what that is. And it just shows that there was a disconnect between the existing administration and the optimism of the incoming administration. Look, I'm here in Michigan where, tipped workers are under the gun for bad legislation here that they hope to get rid of here in the next couple of weeks, and I hope they do. But you mentioned the restaurant. That's why this comes to mind. I mean, this is one of the places where a single parent, mom or dad, can support a couple of kids and really make it happen. Those jobs are critical, and getting out of the way is critical. So the other thing that I look at here, the Democrats would have had you believe that the Trump tax cuts of 2017 benefited only the wealthy and those at the very top. That's simply not true. The 2017 tax cuts helped everybody. You look at the years of 2018, 2019, into the front end of the pandemic, this economy was moving like I had never seen it before. Those were very good years. We hope to return to that, right?
Absolutely. And you only have to look at the numbers during that time period. And even now, revenues are up. In 2024, revenues are up by $500 billion over what the CBO was expecting outside of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And that just shows that they worked. They increased our revenues. The problem is that our spending, our budget went from $4 trillion to $7 trillion. Those numbers don't add up. You have to cut spending. Tax cuts do nothing. Tax cuts do nothing but increase our revenues. They increase prosperity. They allow people to keep their own money and spend it. And all of those things, they allow small business owners to reinvest in their companies. That is what moves our economy, not taking hard-earned money out of Americans' pockets and taking it up to Washington, D.C. What happens in these communities that get to keep their money is these communities do well and families do well.
Yeah, and that's what we need. So we need more tax cuts, less regulation. That's another part of all of this, Elaine, that we haven't touched on. During his first term, Donald Trump said, for every new regulation, get rid of 2. Now he says get rid of 10. And you would think, well, that's kind of, that's just being silly, but it's really not. We have stacks of regulations that are prohibitive to job creation, that are prohibitive to expanding the economy, that are prohibitive to, workers making more money and having more opportunities. So getting rid of regulations, that's another big part of this, isn't it?
And he's got a lot of work to do there, because under the Biden administration, we released a study that showed that this administration had inflicted $2 trillion worth of regulations on our economy, 900 regulations at a cost of $2 trillion to our economy. So he's got a lot of work to do. There's no shortage of things to undo from the Biden administration as Trump comes in.
Yeah, that's remarkable. So lower taxes, lower regulations, allow the economy to be unhandcuffed. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Take away all of the things that prohibit growth and expansion and wage increases, all of these things. Let me ask you, Elaine, are you optimistic?
So optimistic, Steve. It's just been a great holiday. Everyone I talk to is just, they feel better. It's like this sense of relief, like a 1,000-pound weight has been lifted off our shoulders. And we have an opportunity here to get this economy back on track, to get energy prices down, which, as you know, is the root of everything. Sure. It's been this anti-energy policy of this administration and the reckless spending that has driven the cost of living to a point where people are breaking.
Yeah, absolutely true. Energy policy is foundational to the economy of this country. You're exactly right. I am optimistic as well, Elaine. I will be there on Monday, close to the podium, and watch this president get sworn in for the second time. I look forward to it. And look forward to talking to you and hopefully talking about better things ahead. Elaine Parker, thank you.
Have a good one. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Coming up, the National Taxpayers Union President Brandon Arnold will be here to discuss the SALT taxes. They've been knocked down a number of times, but they're back. SALT taxes up next. State and local taxes, SALT taxes, they're referred to. And if you're not familiar with this, what happens is places with bad tax policy like New York or California, and they really tax the daylights out of their citizens in property tax, for example. And as a result, these SALT taxes, there's been this allowance on federal tax to deduct that. And what that simply means is states with terrible tax policies impact the rest of the states that have good tax policies. What's going to happen with that going into the Trump administration? Good question. Brandon Arnold, the Executive Vice President of the National Taxpayers Union, is here to discuss it. Brandon, nice to have you on the program.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, so SALT taxes, as they're called, in New York, Illinois, California, these states that have terrible policies, Massachusetts, the list goes on, basically get to deduct that. I don't get to deduct my property tax because it's not high enough, but they do. And there's been limits, sometimes 15 grand, sometimes 30 grand, but that's it's real money they save by doing this, right? Where are we in the conversation? What is the deduction today? I'm sure you have some idea.
Yeah, the deduction right now is $10,000. That's a lot of money when you talk about paying $10,000 in state and local taxes. But because of other changes that were made in 2017, most people outside of the states that you mentioned, New York, New Jersey, California, and so forth, only really high earners in those states are really up against this cap by and large. Now, what they're talking about doing on Capitol Hill, a delegation of Republicans from those high tax states want to boost that cap up to $200,000. Again, we're not talking about $200,000 of earnings, which is already pretty high. We're talking about people that pay $200,000 just in state and local taxes. Essentially, we're talking about millionaires, multimillionaires, and they are holding hostage this tax package, saying we're not going to vote for it unless you give tens of thousands of tax relief to millionaires in our states and districts. And I think that is really nonsensical.
I don't think that's good. I mean, because here, basically a third, roughly. If you have a tax write-off, if you're in one of the higher tax brackets, if you're at 37%, for example, take 37% of 200,000, that'd be $74,000. Quick math in my head. So they wouldn't, they'd save 74,000 actual dollars that didn't get paid in, these millionaires and billionaires. So $74,000 on a $200,000 tax bill, they never pay in, right?
That's exactly right. And that creates a huge budget math problem as we're trying to pass a tax bill and do so in a fiscally responsible way. Because again, we have a $36 trillion debt right now. So yes, we need to extend these tax cuts, but we simply can't be inefficient and reckless in the manner that we do so. That was the main reason in 2017 we put that $10,000 cap in the first place, is to make the bill more affordable, more reasonable in its size and scope. We need to direct those tax cuts to people that need them the most, and we need to direct them to job creators and people that are going to add to our economy in a positive way, not simply to millionaires and billionaires in some of these really, really poorly run states and districts. They need to get their act under control. They need to fix their fiscal messes that they've made in Albany and Sacramento and Trenton and elsewhere, instead of simply putting a Band-Aid on that in the form of this SALT deduction.
Well, exactly right. And again, I come back to what I said off the top here. We were actually talking about this in the break as well. Why would I, in a place that doesn't have taxes that are exorbitant like that, I mean, and why would I, and what if you're in a really low tax state like Tennessee or Florida or New Hampshire now? Why would those people be forced to subsidize? Because that's really what you're asking them to do. These people in high tax states that have terrible tax policy. Why should New Hampshire subsidize New York, or why should I subsidize California? That's what I find grating here, to say the least, Brandon.
Yeah, and it's not just tax policy. These states are taxing their citizens too much. They're also spending far too much. When you look at spending on a per person basis in states like New York and California, it's nearly double that in states like North Carolina and Texas and Florida. And guess where everybody's leaving for? People are leaving these high tax states and going to lower tax jurisdictions. And again, they're not just lower tax jurisdictions, they're lower spending jurisdictions. So why are those people that are running their states properly, attracting growth, creating jobs, why are those folks subsidizing the people that can't get their act together in New York?
Here's the biggest concern, though. You're saying it's Republicans that are pushing this. Republicans, which means you've only got a razor-thin margin in the House. So if Republicans from New York or California or Illinois, the handfuls that come out of those states say, we can't do it unless we get this, nothing happens.
Right. Yeah, they're basically holding the bill hostage, and they have the ability to do so. In 2017, we lost 13 House Republicans. They voted no against the Trump tax cuts. The majority of those folks did so because of the SALT cap that was put into place. So if they do the same thing again, obviously the bill dies very easily. We only have a couple votes to spare. That number is actually going to fall because three members of the House of Representatives are going into the Trump administration. So once they go in, those are 3 fewer Republican votes. So this is an enormous problem, and we're probably going to have to increase the SALT cap a little bit. But I'm hoping that's a modest increase, because this is a deduction that probably shouldn't exist in the first place. And the notion of lifting it all the way to $200,000, as they're discussing, again, I think it's just complete nonsense, really, really wasteful, inefficient way to operate a tax code.
Well, Brandon, we get in there, make yourself heard and say, this is ridiculous. We can't support this. Speak up for me. I'm a taxpayer. and everybody else. Appreciate all the work you do, Brandon. And hopefully they'll come to their senses on this one.
I hope so.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day.
Take care.
There you have it. Greatly appreciate it. All right, still to come, we're going to have sports with Brock Palmbush coming up. All right, time to check in on sports with my good friend Brock Palmbush.
With a look at sports, I'm Brock Palmbush. A busy night in top 25 men's college basketball. In the marquee game, second-ranked Iowa State beat ninth-ranked Kansas 74-57 in Ames, Iowa. Also, sixth-ranked Tennessee beat 23rd-ranked Georgia 74-56, and 10th-ranked Houston won at home over West Virginia 70-54. In top 25 women's college basketball, number 1 UCLA won at home over Penn State 83-67, and 6th-ranked Connecticut won at St. John's 71-45. A busy night in the NBA as well. 11 games were played. Winners included Milwaukee, Charlotte, Golden State, and the Los Angeles Lakers. In the NHL, there were just 2 games. Buffalo over Carolina 4-2, and Edmonton over Minnesota 5-3. And second-round action concluded at the Australian Open last night. Winners included on the men's side 4th-seeded Taylor Fritz and women's 2nd seed Iga Swiatek. That's a look at sports. Back to you, Steve.
All righty, Brock. Greatly appreciate it. Hey, for those of you in Michigan, pay close attention. I've got something for you. A special offer. This is for Valentine's Day, by the way. Celebrate your love and health this Valentine's Day with an incredible gift. Enter now for your chance to win a Wolverine Water Systems Blue Line system featuring pure health, reverse osmosis, and alkaline system. The perfect way to ensure you're drinking clean, pure, and healthy water every day. The package valued at more than $6,000. Go to stevegruber.com, click on the Wolverine Water giveaway button, and enter your details. You will be entered to win. Anthony says, stop telling people. How am I going to win if you keep telling people? Well, you know. Anyhow, Wolverine Water, best there is. Ivy and I have had it for years. In fact, I've had it for, before I even knew Ivy. That's how long I've had Wolverine Water, and that's apparently how old I am. Speaking of Ivy, she'll be up in the next hour. So will Dave Preston, a Republican from Cedar River. The plan to save the UP rice generators. What does that mean? Well, you'll have to come back in the next hour to find out. I can't give away all my secrets right now. It is the Steve Gruber Show. Thank you for being here. I will be right back. Well, here we go again. Another great hour. I just lit the fuse. We're going to blow it up this hour. It's like Anthony in the restroom. Hey, good to have you here. Greatly appreciate you coming along to the Steve Gruber Show. We'll give you better analysis, better insight, a little bit of humor here and there. Greatly appreciate it. 3 big things you need to know this hour here in the No Panic Zone. Number 1, it's just 4 days to go. 4 days to go until Donald Trump takes the oath of office. We're kind of excited about that. Number 2, in local politics, Democrats left a whole pile of things in the outbox. They forgot to send bills to the governor's desk. If they're not submitted from the House to the governor, they don't get signed. Do you think Matt Hall's hustling all that over? You'll have to think again. And number 3, I'm going to talk about something completely different for a minute. I just found this remarkably cool story on the Detroit News. Now, look, I love Michigan News Source. That is my news company. MichiganNewsSource.com. I love them. It is my news company, and they do incredible work. And if you want to hear about the 99 bills that never made it over to the governor's desk, 9 that are important and are not ever going to make it over to the governor's desk, read it at MichiganNewsSource.com. I encourage you to do that. In the meantime, I find this remarkable story on the Detroit News about an abandoned observatory right outside of Pontiac. Right? The Art Moderne Astronomical Observatory was built in the 1930s. And it's sitting there out of sight, almost out of mind, and people want to save it now. Right? It's in Lake Angeles. Lake Angeles. It was built in the 1930s. It has this is from the Detroit News article, a valuable collection of vintage scientific equipment, including telescopes, controllers, and a device invented on site called the spectroheliokinematograph. Spectroheliokinematograph. How about that? It's a big, long word. I think I got it right. At a time of growing public interest in science, as well as in photography and cinema, the The work done at the observatory, specifically time-lapse movies of the sun, wowed the world. But so did the fact that the astronomers who built the observatory were all amateurs, guys with day jobs who just like to stargaze and tinker. Probably one of the most compelling scientific stories in Michigan over the last century, says Jim Shedlowski, an amateur astronomer who is part of a group that has been advocating for the preservation of the observatory since the 1990s. It's just sitting there locked up, rusting away. But outside of stargazing communities, the McMath-Hulbert Observatory, apparently that's the name of the thing, McMath-Hulbert Observatory, has been privately owned by Lake Angeles businessman Jim Kinsler since 1991. It's more of a well-kept secret than a local landmark. Shedlowski and his fellow astronomy buffs want to change that. They're seeking National Historic status for the site and preservation of the buildings and equipment. I think this is cool. You should see the pictures of this place. It's an observatory. It's in the middle of the woods. A crusade that put them on odds with Kinsler left the observatory's future as cloudy as the Michigan sky in winter. Nice line. It has a worldwide reputation for its contributions to solar research, made the first moving pictures of solar prominences in the first second-to-second film of a total solar eclipse. Films made at this observatory were distributed to school kids around the country, and it's sitting there just rusting. The observatory was operated by the University of Michigan from its earliest years until 1979, when funding issues and other practical considerations led the university to end its lease on the property. It has been in private hands ever since. A deed on the property requires it to be used for scientific research, and descendants of the founders wanted the observatory maintained as a memorial to their discoveries. And for 25 years, with Kinsler's support, the owner, they've hosted public stargazing and educational programs. But members of the MHAS said Kinsler asked them to leave in 21 over a dispute over insurance after years of what they described as hot and cold working relationships with him. He says he no longer allows them on site. Concerns about MHAS not keeping a record of contributions, cash, and materials, and other complaints. He said he worked closely with the founders in the 1990s to set up their 501c3 and financially supported them over the years. He said he is now working to find a new owner to bring the observatory back online. Here's what Kinsler said. So here's where this is a fascinating piece of Michigan history and history for this country. I believe the observatory is a true gem, and I am actively trying to identify a group I can donate it to that will have the financial assets and workers to bring it back to its glory days of programs to enrich the local area. Though I have been offered a large amount of money for several of the world-famous pioneering instruments at the observatory, I have kept every piece there. The whole facility is unusually intact, even down to the original mechanical calculating machines, which are treasures themselves. So look, this guy's, it sounds like he's a good guy too. Everybody wants to save this place. Sometimes it's just fun to talk about something else, isn't it? Sometimes it's just fun to talk about something completely different. An observatory hidden in the woods outside of Pontiac. They did the first films of complete solar eclipses, the first films of the sun up close, time-lapse films. That to me is remarkably fascinating. Americans do great things. So Americans do great things and big things, and it doesn't always come. The lesson here for me, and congratulations to the Detroit News for doing this article. The lesson for me is this, and it should be for you as well. It doesn't take government money to do great things. In fact, it's usually just the opposite. Grand Central Station, hundreds of Carnegie libraries around this nation, and a host of other things like this observatory, built with private money because people had an idea, a vision of what they could do. And they didn't get caught up with government regulations, environmental impact studies, and all the rest of the nonsense. OSHA wasn't there to screw the deal up, all right? So I just think it's a great fun to find something like that and take a look. Now, if you didn't look at your weather report, you're not going to be too impressed, I don't think. The weather report for a week from now is cold, and it's going to start, I think, on Monday. It gets bitter cold across the region. More so. By the way, I was looking at the snowfall totals already for the year. Some places under, some places over. Some places are way over in snowfall already. Was it Marquette that was so high? Let me see here real quick. I can pull it up for him because I was curious about this earlier. No, good Lord. Where did it go? Sometimes the computer is slower than I am, but Marquette was like plus 28 inches over normal. Traverse City was above normal. And so, anyhow, the Siberian Express Arctic Air, the Siberian Express, that's what they're calling it, is on its way. Yeah, no kidding. All right, I'll take a break and be back. I had been told that it was going to be, 35, 38, maybe even 40 degrees for 3 days. Well, guess what? That's all been changed. Yeah, it's going to get warm for about 12 hours. And then, boy, it isn't going to be warm after that. I can assure you of that. It's going to be even colder in the UP. Yeah, that's where my friend Dave Preston is from. He's a state representative here in Michigan from Cedar River. Dave, welcome back to the program. Good to have you here.
Thanks for having me. So much for that climate change, eh?
Yeah, they had said it was going to be above, 35, 38, 30, 3 days in a row. No, it's about 12 hours. I just looked. It's going to be 37 degrees in the middle of the night. Yeah.
Extended forecast, we're going to get really cold. Yeah,
really cold. Yeah, the Great Lakes, they'll be frozen this year, like they usually are.
Exactly.
You're familiar with that. And speaking of being frozen, and making sure you have the right amount of energy, that's why we're here today to talk about rice generators. And I'm not talking about the grain. I'm talking about reciprocating internal combustion engine generators. Reciprocating internal combustion engine generators, rice generators. What are they? Why do I care?
Okay, short background on those. We used to have 2 coal plants up in the Marquette region. They fed the mines, and they basically fed all of the UP. During the first clean energy rewrite, they wanted to shut those down, which they did. And the grid operator, MISO, came in and said, "Hey, shame on you, bad. We're going to hit you with some big fees called system source or system resource payments, SSRs, to make in lieu of those being gone." And up in the UP, everybody, including the mines, kind of freaked out, and there was a big bonding mechanism initiated by the mine cliffs as well as by the citizens in the UP, and we built 13 rice generators. All of them are about just under 20 megawatts apiece. There's 7 of them in Negaunee, 3 of them in Marquette Board of Light and Power, another 3 over in Lance Beriga. And
So
the
if I
energy
did my
rewrite,
math real quick there, that was 17 of them.
13 of them.
13. I'm sorry, I lost track there. All right, go ahead.
And the energy rewrite basically mandates that those have to be shut down by about 2035. And they're cited it out to 2050. And they're bonded out to 2050. And they are the only baseload power that we have in the UP. And
So what would be the point of they run off? What do they run from? Natural gas? What do they run from?
Natural gas. So we cut our emissions by over 70%, and they're the best available technology right now for baseload generation, replacing the coal. And
So let
now
me get
that's
this
not
straight.
Let
Let me get this straight. Let me understand this, Dave. The state of Michigan produces natural gas, do we not? Plenty of it, actually.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we would be powering ourselves with natural gas produced here locally, putting people to work for locally produced natural gas and natural energy. And clean burning natural gas is one of the best things there is, right?
Right.
And let me put this delicately because it's a family show. These idiots, these imbeciles that are pursuing, bunny hugging and tree loving, would rather have you sit in the cold and the dark in the UP than have clean burning natural gas produced in the state of Michigan. Am I following so far?
That's pretty much it. It's fairies and pixie dust when it comes to energy generation in the UP. They think that wind turbines, battery plants, and solar are going to keep us.
I think it's illegal to burn pixie dust. I think that's also illegal.
Yep.
Just throwing that out there, yeah. So what's the solution? Obviously, the solution is you get a Republican governor in 26, you get a Republican legislature in 26, you get common sense people that understand that it takes energy to run America, and therefore it takes energy to run Michigan, and you extract your cranium from your rectum and you move forward. Am I on board so far?
No, you're straight up. And, the MPSC did a review on this, and they even admitted, hey, we screwed up on this. And the rice units in the UP need to continue. And yesterday we dropped, or a couple days ago, we dropped the bill to exempt those rice generators from being decommissioned. And Dem leadership came out and just basically condemned it and said, everything is good. We're going to stay on this path. But that path for the UP is a destructive path.
And yeah, I would say that'd be like getting rid of propane in the UP, right? Propane and natural gas are what run the UP. That's what heats your homes. It dries your clothes. It cools your food. It does all of these things, right?
And everything up there is under attack, whether it be Line 5, which is our source of propane, whether it be our electricity, our extraction industries like our mining, our agriculture, our timber, everything's under attack up there. I mean, everything that we do up there and we do well is under attack.
Hey, Dave, if Greenland can be a state, why not the UP be a state? I just, I'm not trying to create problems.
Since the 70s. Yeah.
Or maybe I am.
Since the 70s. That's been our goal since the 70s. Statehood. Yeah.
Superior.
Yes.
That's the name, right? Superior.
That's the name we were shooting for, Superior.
Yeah, well, I can't blame you. Look, do you think you can get this fixed then? Can this be solved?
Yeah, it really can. It can easily be solved either with an exemption for us up there due to our rice generators, or with just an amendment to the clean energy exempt, basically renewing the fact that natural gas is green. That solves everything right there.
Yeah, it certainly would. But it wouldn't solve the idiocy of some that serve in elected positions, not only in our state, but around this country of ours, who have no concept of what it takes to run a country or a business. All they seem to be able to run are their mouths. Dave, I greatly appreciate you being here. I'll give you the last word.
It's at the end of the day, people need to realize this isn't about the climate. It's all about money. It's trillions of dollars in inflation reduction, and they are harvesting it for this green energy plan. And people are lining their pockets and making tons of money off this agenda that's killing the country.
Well, I've got a great idea. How about we just bulldoze the UP and put in solar panels? I think that would save everybody. Good grief. You just have to wonder what's going on. I'm sorry, I'm a little sarcastic today, Dave, but, some things are so dumb, that's all you can do. I appreciate you being here. As always, Dave Preston, he represents the UP. What district?
The 108th. So basically center all the way to the east side. 6 counties, about 60 townships.
The 108th. All right, Dave. We'll talk again. Thank you, sir.
Thanks again, Steve. Take care.
All right, still to come, Ivy will be here. She knows I'm sarcastic. She did say yes. I mean, she did. Yeah, I'm looking at this. Okay, so I go, and one of the things I've done for years on this program, this time of the year, is I look at the Great Lakes ice cover. It's always fascinating. We are now at just broke 10%, right? And the reason for that is because every year they keep telling, there's not going to be any ice in the Great Lakes. Of course there's going to be ice in the Great Lakes. And then one of the years they told us here, a couple of years ago, it was at 95% frozen, right? We froze here, 2 or 3 years ago. Remarkably cold winter. And so I like to keep track of what is going on. We're at 11.5% frozen. And with this cold that's coming in, this Siberian train of cold, it's those dastardly Canadians always sending us cold air. They are going to have us really cold because it's going to be sub-zero from Duluth to Marquette to the Sioux to Alpena to Green Bay to Milwaukee to Muskegon, all over. It's going to be frozen solid. The good news is, for the folks that like to ice fish, Lake Erie is really good this year. The whole west end of the lake is already frozen, so the folks out there like Kelly's Island and that whole stretch of Lake Erie all the way back to Toledo and Monroe, frozen, baby. If you like to ice fish for walleye, this is your year. Didn't have it last year. I wouldn't have gone out on that ice for anything. Makes me a little nervous as it is, but total ice cover is going to be pretty dramatic this year. I think it could break average. And the average, of course, is about 50%, just under 45%. Right now, we're at about 11.5%, like I said, but on our way to something much more significant. So we'll see as it gets cold here.
You ever see the ice caves up in Pictured Rocks?
Yeah, that's what Ron Rademacher talks about them a lot. The ice caves, the Eden ice caves, I think they're called.
Yeah, I always wanted to do that.
They've made it easier. He just told, do you not listen to the show when Ron's on? What's going on? He just said this a couple weeks ago. They made it easier. They put trails out there.
Oh, I must have missed that.
Yeah. Anyhow, so yeah, the ice caves are a cool thing, and you'll have great ice caves this year. No question about it. I'll also have Ivy after the break. No question about it. Stay right there. It's the Steve Gruber. I don't know if that's correctly pronounced, but I'm going to go with it. I don't speak Chinese fluently or at all for that matter. But during the break, we were talking about what is the preferred liquor of China. I mean, Japan has sake. In America, we have bourbon. In France, they have wine and champagne. China, it's baijiu. It's distilled sorghum and other grain like wheat, rice, and barley. There you go, Ivy. Ivy's with me, of course, as she always is this time of the day. Good morning. It's baijiu. Never had it, never even heard of it. Have you? You were a mixologist, a bartender for a number of years.
I have never heard of that. Had no idea. Don't know what color the label is. I don't know what the bottle looks like. Never heard of it.
All right. Well, I'm gonna see if I can look it up here. I mean, that's my assignment is to find out about Chinese liquor today.
Okay.
Because I mean, look, these are important things that I need to know. Anyhow, what's on your mind today?
You know, I wanted to follow up about your conversation that you were having with Representative Preston. You know, if we continue down this green energy path, especially here in Michigan, we really need to take into consideration how we're going to be beholden to China. And quite frankly, you might as well start learning Mandarin now, because let's think about it. Everything, okay, not everything, but 90% of the things that you go into a store and buy, where is it made?
Well, I think that's right. So if I'm drinking Mandarin, or learning Mandarin, I'm going to be drinking baijiu.
Right.
Apparently, the best-selling, funkiest tasting liquor in the world is what it says on Grub Street.
Oh, okay.
Best-selling, funkiest tasting. I don't know. I don't know if I like funky tasting. Anyhow. You're right, though. All these roads lead to a bad place. Look, I don't care if it's...
And this is the deal. You know, if you think about it, our microchips are being made in China. Our pharmaceuticals are being made in China. Our consumer goods are being made in China. Our textiles are being made in China. Not only in China, but primarily in China.
Well, right.
The rare earth materials are being produced, made, and owned by China.
Right, which is why we need Greenland. But the chips primarily are in Taiwan, but of course they want to go raid Taiwan.
But they're assembled, any type of device, a lot of devices, especially if you're talking about Apple products, they're all assembled in China.
That's true. But apparently, weren't we told, though, that Apple was not going to make the iPhone anymore in China, and they were going to bring their products back home? Has that happened?
And there may be a development and update to that, and they're probably going to take some time. But, possibly so. I'd have to look up. I'm not actually sure on that, but I can certainly find out. But we have talked about it before, but just to, touch on China's Belt and Road Initiative that dictator Xi actually put into place in 2013 to go into other countries, create industry there. And if you look at a map around the country, I mean, pretty much all of Africa has signed on to this initiative. A lot of European countries have done it, many in South America.
Well, yeah. In fact, when I went to Costa Rica, it's been 15, 18 years now since I was first in Costa Rica. And I've told you this story, but for anybody who hasn't heard the story, we were there, we're fishing on the Pacific side, and out just off the coast is this big, old, giant, rusty ship. I mean, it doesn't even look like the thing would float. And we're in this beautiful resort area, right? Mm-hmm. And I asked the guide that we're with, I said, what is that? Oh, that's a Chinese canning ship. Because China came into Costa Rica, built 3 or 4 bridges in the country for their highways. And in exchange for that, Costa Rica says, well, look, we'll give you some fishing rights. Well, they're supposed to remain 3 miles or more off, and they're right in there. They're not a half mile off the coast, And there's canning ship, and he says, yeah, it's horrible conditions. You've got these, 10 and 12-year-old kids in there that work the canning ship. They're basically slave labor in there. And they're just destroying, raping the fishery off Costa Rica with these big netting vessels. And there's nothing they can do about it. Costa Rica has 3 naval ships total, haven't had a military since 1955. And China comes in and takes advantage. Here's some money. Here, we'll take, and they get access, you're right, in Africa, Central America, South America, to everything.
Yeah. I mean, even in Italy, they have really put in textiles and invested in buying textile companies and things like that. So it's
we
definitely
learned that
something
during COVID because that's how Italy got so infected, because they're all going back and forth between Italy and China.
Absolutely.
Because the textiles industry making clothing.
And I think I touched on this earlier in the week, but China buying Smithfield, and that if you guys
Smithfield
know,
being the meat packing company. That was back in 2004 for anybody who wouldn't know. Go ahead.
Absolutely. But I just wonder, it concerns me that such a power like that, we know in America that they are not friendly to America and want to essentially take over the world. I mean, that's what their goals are.
Not friendly to the principles of freedom and liberty and freedom of speech. No,
so
they care about none of those things.
I just don't understand how, one, they could be buying up farmland, Chinese companies, or buying American food companies. I don't know. I just think that that's a little...
I think it's dangerous.
Something that has to be looked under a microscope and to be seen, like, should we be doing this or not? But interesting, like, to talking about food processing facilities. I don't know if you sent this to me. A new recent report reveals unsanitary conditions at multiple Boar's Head facilities.
I know, it breaks your heart.
Including plants in Newcastle, Indiana, Forest City, Arkansas, and Petersburg, Virginia.
So here's people need to know this. So
wait, before you go too far,
ahead.
I want to read this. FOIA requests were received, and they released these inspection reports by the FDA. And the documents revealed that equipment was covered in meat scraps, crusted meat, unidentified slime, an abundance of insects dating back over 6 years.
Makes me want to have a Sammy.
Well, and it's
here's what I'm going to tell people. Hold on. There's a reason I'm going to tell them this. Boar's Head costs more than anything else in the deli cabinet, generally speaking, right? It's more expensive because it's supposed to be a higher grade, higher quality. And Ivy has bought Boar's Head for years because she thinks it's of higher quality. So I walked into the office the other day. I said, I don't mean to break your heart. And she says, what do you mean? And I dropped the article on the desk, and she goes, no, I thought I did. I thought you were going to cry.
Well, I wanted to cry because, I mean, we eat this. We give this to our kids. We try to select the best things possible to put, to give to our ourselves.
Most people
do.
You try to find the best product, right?
And it was just so heartbreaking. It's like, oh no, in 2000 last year, or 2 years ago, I guess now, in 23, there was a big listeria outbreak, and it was from this factory. Yeah, in Virginia. It was they had found that it was coming from that factory, and it's just unbelievably terrible. But this is why we hunt and fish, right? We want to know where our meat comes from, how it's processed. We actually, clean the deer or the fish, and then we take it to a processor that we trust, that we know what their processing procedures are like. We know that there's not some identified
and something
slime.
else we just did. No slime, no bugs for 6 years and running. We just bought a quarter of a cow from our good friend Alex because we know where the animals come from. We know how they're raised, how they're treated. All right, hold that thought, Ivy. Nobody behind you, so we might as well just keep you around and keep me entertained because my attention span is so short. But yeah, we know where our meat comes from, and I have a question for you concerning that when we come back. I'm not going to ask it now. I'll ask when we get back. It's the Steve Gruber Show. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Rumble, Substack, all these places, broadcasting live every day. Now, so the question that remains on the table, being on the table, the operative word here, Ivy, is with this heartbreaking revelation about Boar's Head. And I'm not picking on Boar's Head. Look, there are issues from time to time in other places. But Boar's Head is like 30% more expensive. It's you look at the price of everything in the deli case and you see Boar's Head, and it has the black label and all that happy stuff. Here's my question.
Okay.
Next time, now I eat almost none of that stuff. You know that. You and I eat different things. The kids still eat sandwiches and so forth. And Are you going to buy it going forward? That's my question to you.
I mean, I will seek out an alternative, but I mean.
Or do you trust that they fixed it? I can see the look on her face. She's in pain. She's like, ugh.
Well, you know, it's like cheese, right? Like sliced cheese. I guess I could buy a block of cheese and slice it for sandwiches. I could do that. It's just things that it's very difficult to make at home, right? But yeah, I guess, you know, I love Boar's Head products. I like their meat, like the flavor of their meat.
Right. Well, now you know what flavors it.
Oh, I know. I just don't know what to do. You know, I'm at a loss. Maybe shoot a turkey, buy a slicer. I don't know.
We'll be down at Cabela's buying food processing machines, the big stainless steel ones. We'll have grinders and slicers and all that happy stuff. But here's the thing. If you have grinders and slicers in the kitchen, I'll have access to them.
Oh, no.
How dangerous is that?
Yes, I think we need to avoid that.
We need to rethink that whole process.
Oh.
Anyhow. So,
Well,
what else you got there in your
well, you know,
bag of tricks?
talking about food, you did see that the FDA banned
red dye number 3.
The use of red dye number 3.
Yeah.
We, of course, coming into, I find this timing to be interesting, don't you?
Of course it is.
Here's the
like
changing of the guard. Yeah.
I'm sure Joe Biden will take credit for it because he did a speech last night, and I was so interested, I didn't even bother to watch it. He did his farewell speech. Took credit for the deal that just happened in the Middle East, even though everybody knows that Donald Trump sent his envoy, Steve Witkoff, over to negotiate behind the scenes. That's what got it done.
Right.
Red food coloring number 3, red dye number 3 is gone. That's because of MAHA, Make America Healthy Again, and the initiatives there. Here and blue dye number 1, that's one of the bad ones, right? Yellow dye number 2, blue dye number 1, red dye number 3.
I have a whole list actually. I have on my notes on my phone. I have a entire list of things that you should absolutely not put in your body ever. And yeah, I mean, so if you're talking about dyes, yellow number 5, yellow number 6, citrus red number 2, red number 3.
And so why, if they're on there and people know it, and you can get a list on your phone, and you know you shouldn't eat these things because. And apparently about this red dye number 3,
well, listen,
they've known it for 30 years.
Okay, so here's the problem, right? I go into a grocery store, I buy some sushi rolls, and I buy some seaweed because I love it.
Well, I talked about this yesterday. I don't know why anybody buys and eats seaweed, but apparently we do that. I don't eat it, but anyhow.
I know you don't like it. I love it.
Well, it's like eating cat litter.
It's actually great for removing toxins in your body,
no, it's
especially
like
heavy
cat
metals.
Litter. Trust me.
Okay.
Used cat litter.
Anyhow,
go on.
I don't know why. I just thought I should read the label. Blue and red dye.
Blue and green.
Blue and green. No.
No, blue and yellow. Sorry,
blue and yellow. That's right.
That makes
to make
green. Right.
And I'm like, why do I need dye in my seaweed? Apparently, you wanted to make it look more green.
More green, right.
No, I ended up throwing it away. It was so
first
sad.
Of all, see, I'm going to take the question to the next step. Why the hell would you buy seaweed in the first place? I'll just
okay.
But here's my big question about all these dyes and food colors and so forth. Skittles are all going to be brown going forward, you know, because if you look at the list of prohibited colors, where do you look at the list of what is in Skittles, right?
You shouldn't eat Skittles. Let's
Good
just
God,
say that.
No. It's sugar with all these poisonous dyes. Other than that, it's really good for you. So I'm going to share this. I don't know what the program was. Our daughter has this thing on her phone.
It's called
if you go
Yucca.
shopping. What's it called?
Yucca.
Yucca. All right.
That's what it
so
is.
If you take your phone and you put up and you read
scan
the
the
product,
label. You
scan the label, the barcode.
QR code, yeah,
right.
or whatever. Not the
Boom.
QR code, but
the barcode.
The barcode.
It'll tell you what the quality is of that product on a scale of 1 to 100. Should you eat it? Should you not? If you get
and
north
it
of
says
50,
good, or it says medium, or it says poor.
So I found 2 products that came back with 0.
Oh.
Because it became kind of a fun game. We went out shopping over the weekend, and I said, well, what's this do?
And then we rated it beforehand.
Right, we would guess. All right, is this going to be a good product or a bad product? You know, milk's good. You know, milk, like non-dairy creamer.
Terrible.
Horrible stuff. International Delight. Terrible. There was this thing called a Reese's No Bake cookie thing. It got a 0.
Well,
0,
yeah,
right? So
it was like brownie. It was Reese's brownies.
Right. And so then we have a snack drawer here at the house. A lot of people have that. Here's your snack drawer. Here's your, I'm a snacker, whatever. And there's these Little Debbie donut sticks. They've been in there forever. Nobody's ever eaten them. I don't even know where they came from. 0. We go, just out of curiosity, what's that score? 0. So we found 2 zeros. I mean, this is stuff you just, I mean,
don't
what
think
is
about.
in it? And so you would think that it's got flour and sugar and maybe some butter, whatever you bake something with.
Right.
But these little Debbie sticks are probably much like Twinkies. You set them outside, they never actually rot. The animals look at it and go, yeah, I don't think so. Because animals know, right?
Unless it's our dog, which is she'll eat anything.
Our dog eats broken dishes. She actually did that.
It's really something that you have to be just dedicated to reading labels. And if you do that and you just see 10 billion items, you don't know what they are, or have an app like the one that we have now that just takes you through all the items, and you can read about those and learn about those, get educated about what's in your food, especially, a lot of these ultra-processed foods are causing issues in our kids, attention issues, especially food dyes.
Attention issues, huh? Where am I?
But it is important, and we talk about this a lot. It's actually something that I think our kids really enjoy talking about. It's kind of become a game in our household. But, it is really important just to have a long life and quality life.
Be
and
careful what
healthy
you,
life.
As they used to say about computers, garbage in, garbage out. What you put in your body, just keep it in mind, all right? No Skittles, no Little Debbie's donut sticks, and no Reese's
You
things.
are what you eat is true, whatever you put in your body.
That's right. I mean, good conversation. Thanks. By the way, Jeff says he has some goose pastrami, so we'll know where that came from.
Nice.
Anyhow, we'll talk about that. Final thoughts on this program in a moment. Halloween just augured in like a plane into the mountainside. Just exploded during the break here. Why? I did something dumb. I looked up the most dangerous candies, and on livestrong.com, I got the dirty dozen, or 20 as it were. Sour Patch Kids, bad. Candy corn. Who doesn't love candy corn? I mean, all it is colored sugar. Who doesn't love that, right? Yeah, well, you can't have that. Or Butterfinger, or Twizzlers, or Baby Ruth, or M&M's, Raisinets, Three Musketeers, Twix, Milky Way, Kit Kat, Starburst, Mounds. Almond Joy, by the way, was not on the list. Almond Joys are still safe. Dots. What is a dot? Reese's, Whoppers, Skittles, of course, and Snickers, which kind of broke Anthony's heart. He thought, well, Snickers are not on the list. They made the top 20, Anthony. I'm sorry to break your heart. Yeah. All right. You know what? Donald Trump eats McDonald's food and Diet Coke. That's not exactly on your guide to good health, but somehow he pulls it off. I don't think he eats candy, though. I've never seen him eat candy. Maybe he does. But Big Macs and Diet Cokes and fries, he's all about that. He's apparently not a big label reader, but maybe it's, I mean, you hear stories about people that are 100 that smoke, or drink whiskey or whatever. I do 5 cigarettes and 2 shots of whiskey a day. I'm 103 years old. I'll kick your ass. You see those people now and then, right? They're not normal, all right? They're cyborgs, they're reptilian, they're not normal, so you can't do that. It'll kill you, it'll kill the average person. What Donald Trump does would kill the average person. There's your takeaway for today. No Big Mac for you, and no Boar's Head. Fight the good. 4 days to go, my friends, and there'll be Big Macs. Will be, you know how they have the food of choice, the snack of choice? There'll just be stacks of Big Macs in the Oval Office. 4 days. Fight the good fight. Keep the faith. God bless America. I'm Steve Gruber. It is the Steve Gruber Show, and remember, only you can save America.